Drama awaits, only on Echoes of Love. The adventure begins with this young man's name was Hyun. He was a university student, and his dream was to become a professional baseball player. But unfortunately, he suffered a serious injury to his leg, which shattered his dream. For this reason, he was filled with rage and went straight up to the roof of the building to throw himself off. At the university, his classmates saw him, so they called the firefighters to save him, and everyone tried to convince him to come down. As for this girl, her name was Sibin, and she belonged to a certain tribe. She was sleeping, waiting for the class to end so she could leave, until the teacher shocked her by saying, "No one will leave the classroom until Hyun's problem is solved." She replied, "What does that have to do with me? If he doesn't throw himself off, am I going to be trapped in the classroom?" Then she asked for permission under the pretense of going to the bathroom and headed to the roof. As soon as she saw the police there, she said to them, "Don't worry, I'm his fiancé. Once he sees me, he'll come down." They believed her and allowed her to go to him. She sat beside him and said, "You made me get locked in the classroom because of you, so make a move, either throw yourself off or come down." He said to her, "I don't want to die, I just wanted them to feel me a little and understand what I'm going through." She said, "It's okay. Stand up now, move your legs, and go back to playing baseball. That's better for you," then extended her hand to him. But as soon as he grabbed it, she pushed him, saying, "This time, learn not to make people trapped because of you." He fell while looking at her with admiration. At that moment, the officer was shocked and put handcuffs on her to arrest her, but she ran to Hyun, begging him to ask the officer to release her. He said to her, "On the condition that you become my real fiancé." She said, "Are you serious? Then take me to jail. You'll spend years there." Over time, that crazy girl decided to change her life. She became an officer in the Special Forces, while Hyun also became an officer, but as a regular detective. Nevertheless, he did not give up baseball. One day, he went to investigate a murder. It happened at a hotel, and when they entered the room, they found the victim lying on the floor in a large pool of blood. But they could not find the murder weapon, and they knew nothing about the killer except that he lived in that room. Then Hyun looked under the bed for evidence and found the killer hiding there. He quickly subdued him to start questioning, only to be surprised that the killer didn't even remember why he had killed the victim. On top of that, the killer attacked them, bit one of them, and drank his blood. When they asked him how that happened, he told them that after taking a certain pill, his state changed completely. He also told them that he had bought the pill from a new recruit in the Special Forces. They confirmed that the drug was legal and government approved, but after taking it, he didn't know how it affected him until he ended up in a hysterical state. Hyun then began searching for that recruit and discovered that his trainer in the Special Forces was Sibin. He called her quickly and said, "That trainee of yours is distributing a drug that causes problems, and it has already caused a full-on murder." She hurried to find out who the traitor trainee was, went to see him, and asked about the drug he was selling. When she entered his room, she found him leaning over a nurse. She exclaimed, "God forgive me. What are these two doing?" But when she opened the door fully, she found he had turned into a zombie and lunged at her to bite her. They intervened quickly and aimed their weapons at him, but they were shocked because he wasn't affected by the bullets and attacked them, trying to bite them too. They quickly locked him in the room, and she ran to the bathroom to wash the blood off her hands, only to discover that her hands were injured. She called them, screaming, "I had no idea what was happening. I went in thinking he was a normal person." At that moment, the head of the crisis response department came in and told her he would take her for tests to ensure she wasn't contaminated. He took her phone and all the weapons she had, and she rode with them in the car. Meanwhile, Hyun was trying to call her, but the chief answered for her. Hyun recounted the details of the crime he investigated that morning and arranged to meet him to discuss the case. The chief started asking him questions about the crime, then paused for a moment and left. However, the officer felt that what he said suggested that the drug could cause a real disaster, so he decided to return to the crime scene to verify. Indeed, after a short while, he found a pill of the same type and handed it over to the detectives to continue the investigation. However, he was surprised when his friend called, saying, "Don't waste your time. We tested the killer and found nothing unusual in the pill he took." He felt a bit frustrated, but he didn't lose hope. He took the pill and went to his friend, a pharmacology specialist, saying, "I want you to find out the source of this pill. Where did it come from?" He stayed up all night researching on the computer until he got the answer and told him that the pill was called Next. It had formerly been given to pneumonia patients, but after being released to the market, they discovered it had very dangerous side effects, so it was withdrawn and banned from legal sale. He then began to suspect even more that it was the cause of the widespread illness. At the research center, they took many blood samples from her for analysis and confirmed she was fine. They had expected her to be infected because anyone who deals with infected individuals and gets cut or exhausted would also get infected. But the biggest shock came when the test results appeared. They discovered she had complete immunity and hadn't been affected at all, while she had no idea what was really happening. When she returned to her room, she found her phone and immediately called them, saying, "Do you know what's happening?" The next morning, when she woke up and walked through one of the hallways, she saw the trainee she had previously confined in the room. She rushed in to ask him about the drug he had taken and why he had ended up in that state, but suddenly, he transformed and attacked her. The armed forces intervened quickly and saved her, but she began to doubt, how did they know he would attack her? Did they save her by accident? She began to suspect that the chief had deliberately left the door to the room open for her to enter. Indeed, when she confronted him, he admitted the truth, saying, "Yes, I intentionally left the door open for you to enter, to see if the infected would recognize you and not attack you, or if they would attack you like the others." He added, "Those infected with this disease suffer from extreme thirst, so they attack victims to drink their blood. After the test results came back, we confirmed that you are completely safe, so I will allow you to return, but you must come to me every 2 weeks for follow-up." At that moment, she quickly agreed, but on the condition that her grades in the department be raised so she could get her own apartment. The reason was that the students studying with her were being given separate apartments to live in alone. He said to her, "Maybe I can help you, but those who were granted the apartments are all married, so you have to be married as well." While she was talking to him, she was surprised to discover that he had come to their headquarters. He then entered his office and handed her the pill from the medicine he had found at the crime scene, saying, "Okay, I understand now that this drug is the cause of this new advanced virus." Here, the chief was amazed by his intelligence. Afterwards, he went to Sibin to accompany her, and as soon as the idea occurred to her, she said, "All right, this is the person I'll marry to get the apartment, and I won't stop in front of him." She said to him, "What if I don't love you?" He was shocked, but he was surprised and pleased because ever since they had studied together, he had wanted to marry her. She clarified, "I won't marry you out of love, I'll only marry you to get the apartment in my name." He looked at her and said, "That's fine. We'll marry for love, just as you like." Indeed, they got married, and they were given their apartment. They decorated it to their taste and hung a picture that had been their first photo together. The photo had been taken by an officer who had previously arrested them, and he gave them a box containing many local products for his wife, asking her to distribute them to the neighbors to promote their store. Sibin took the box and distributed it to the neighbors. Some welcomed her as warmly as they would a young girl, while others closed their doors on her. Afterwards, she returned home to rest. Of course, since the marriage was only for the apartment, neither of them had a bed of their own. They had to place the beds in the same house, so that no official could intervene during visits. She kept telling herself about her dream of having an apartment in her name because, when she was young, she had suffered greatly from her father's company going bankrupt. Everyone lived in a single house, and she didn't even have a place to sleep. She often had to sleep in the work car. Therefore, her life's dream was to own an apartment of her own. The next morning, Hyun woke up to find the chief speaking to him on the phone and asking him to carry out a mission, to track down the drug dealer who had sold the killer that pill. At first, he didn't want to attempt it, but he called his superior, informing him that he had to follow orders, and the superior agreed. Meanwhile, Sibin woke up to find her mother calling to check on her and informed her that the situation outside was chaotic due to the spread of the zombie virus, that many people had been infected, and that the media was reporting scandals about it. Saiben reassured her mother, telling her that she was showing no symptoms. Then she heard noise upstairs and went to their neighbors to ask them to lower the volume. Her neighbor came and apologized, saying that the noise last night had disturbed him. When she returned, she took the little girl to explore the building, inspecting the entire complex. The first thing she noticed was a cane. But upon entering, she was surprised when the official there told her that her apartment was not listed on the plan and that she had to pay to enter. She became angry and said, "Enough." Then she went out to examine the walls and the materials available for free. A colleague in prison called her, saying he had heard that one of the infected had hurt himself, but he was lying, there were no injuries. However, he had deliberately cut his hand with a knife, and Saiben was quickly taken to the center for tests. When they arrived, he showed them the wound he had caused himself with the knives, which turned out to be part of an agreement with a journalist to film the confined zombies for a large sum of money. He had no other way to enter the center except by pretending to be infected, so they took a blood sample from him for analysis. After he returned, he disappeared, creating chaos as everyone began searching for him. Saiben continued tracking the events and discovered that the man had agreed with the journalist to film the zombies, and now he was searching for them, putting his life at risk. Meanwhile, a truck carrying many frozen zombies arrived, and he began photographing them to send the pictures to the journalist for money. But suddenly, the noise caused the zombies to awaken. The armed forces intervened, seeing the truck moving quickly. They closed the door, not realizing he was inside. Saiben climbed up to see and spotted him transformed, and her friend was with her. She decided to rescue him and entered to free him, but she herself got trapped inside and no one could get out. The armed forces had to close the door from the outside, but at the last moment, Hyun arrived, opened the door, and rescued her and her friend. Then they complicated controlling the situation with electricity and managed to subdue the zombies. Hyun ran to check on Saiben and asked where she had been. She told him she had been on a mission to capture the drug dealer, and they discovered that the dealer was turning people into zombies while continuing to sell the drugs. One of his men had also turned into a zombie and was restrained to attack people like a rabid dog. Hyun tried to catch him, but the zombie attacked, and at the last moment, the colonel intervened and killed him. Hyun was angry because these people who had turned into zombies were originally human and could have been cured and returned to normal, but the colonel was unwilling to compromise. When the dealer became angry and refused to reveal the source of the drug, they restrained him and gave him the pill to turn him into a zombie as well. At that moment, Saiben saw her friend, who was embarrassed by what had happened, but she reassured him, saying, "Don't worry, you'll be fine now." Afterward, she went out and kept asking the colonel for help because she had closed the door and been involved in this situation, but the assistants told her that what had happened was not intentional and that she had already lost 5 friends due to the virus. For this reason, the zombies were not allowed to leave, and she had to close the door on them. At this point, they understood her situation. He then got her into the car, and they drove back home. She put on a neat shirt and started talking to her mother via video call, while he sat beside her to reassure her that they were fine. But her mother quickly became worried because she knew her son was exhausted, so she asked him to stand up and let her talk to Saiben. At first, he didn't want to get up, but he heard some noise upstairs in the apartment, so he went up to see what was happening. When he got upstairs, he found one of their neighbors had come to complain about the noise, and the neighbor was nearly dying while apologizing. He explained this time that it was his wife who was sick and causing the noise. Hyun became suspicious and asked him for the name of his wife and where she worked. He then called her clinic and inquired about her appointment for that day. They told him she hadn't attended, but her office manager was there. He immediately went to the clinic and saw the manager leaving. It was the same woman he had seen with the man at their home yesterday. He saw her carrying the manager's belongings and began to suspect that something had happened to the man's wife. Meanwhile, Saiben was shocked when she saw on TV the video her colleague had filmed, and now everyone knew that the zombie virus was real. She ran to the supermarket and bought a large amount of food to store, but when she arrived, she found that one person had already bought everything, and no one else dared to shop. Although the government had issued an emergency warning, no one had been paying attention this time. She returned home and heard a commotion that made her anxious. At that moment, a wounded man appeared along with two worried girls. When she opened the door, she grabbed him by the arm and noticed a bloodstain on it. She immediately opened the door to see what was going on inside. The man was forced to confess that his wife had turned into a zombie, which was why he had locked her in the bathroom. A fight broke out when she tried to open the door to see his wife. He pushed her and closed the door on her, then left himself with a patrol, and they found his wife staring at her. The girl entered the small bathroom and closed the glass door. The zombie did not see her as a clear target but was focused on her husband to kill him. Hyun intervened and tried to open the door for her. She ran after her husband to kill him and take revenge, but at the last moment, the man escaped, leaving his little daughter alone. The zombie wife approached and tried to attack the girl to drink her blood, but Sibin arrived just in time and held her mouth shut with a strong hand. Hyun then came to help her and saw that the husband had left the scene. They went after him because he was the cause of everything that had happened. Meanwhile, emergency forces arrived and took the injured woman. Hyun entered the neighbor's house and noticed blood on a golf club and the same drug that caused the illness. He began to understand what was happening but needed to verify it first. After the disaster, doctors from the hospital arrived and started distributing medication there. Everyone panicked and tried to flee the area. People rushed to the supermarket to buy and stock food. At that moment, the colonel appeared on TV and announced the severity of the situation, telling everyone that if they saw anyone showing such symptoms, they should immediately contact the police. Fear and panic spread among the residents. Despite all this, money could not affect the value of the apartment Sibin had obtained, so she asked all the neighbors to remain silent about it and not inform anyone outside, so that the value of her apartment would remain intact. Hyun went to the center and saw the patient again. The doctors informed him of the gravity of the discovery. The woman had died and then turned into a zombie because she had taken that drug before, which kept her alive after death. He then told them that she was still alive to fight and reveal who had killed her, which, of course, was her husband. That night, the husband spent a long time cleaning the bathroom, wiping the blood, removing all traces and fingerprints, and even cleaning the golf club. When Hyun came to arrest him, he was shocked to see the house completely clean and free of any evidence of the crime. But this did not prevent them from detaining him, especially because the wife's office manager had witnessed him hitting his wife with the golf club. He tried to lie, claiming that he hit her after she had turned into a zombie and attacked him, but they did not believe him. When the analysis confirmed that the woman had died and then turned, they decided to restrain the husband and try to hand him over to the police. At that moment, the colonel arrived and informed them that the drug dealer had confessed to selling a large quantity of that medicine in the area. There were certainly many in those apartments who would become zombies later. Therefore, the government decided to lock down the residents for a week to check who was infected or still healthy. They indeed closed all entrances and exits to the complex. When the girl returned home, she found their neighbor, who had been detained to be handed over to the police. He hugged her. Meanwhile, one of the traders took advantage of the opportunity to escape, but they later captured him because there was no exit, the roads were all blocked. After a short while, that man found a phone and a lawyer's number. He called, asking for help with the case and requesting that the lawyer defend him, claiming that the officer had arrested him without legal grounds. He then tried to escape but was returned to bed so he could not flee again, and was placed under supervision to prevent him from suing the girl who had testified against him, as she would be restrained with him and confined in the same house. Before leaving, he reassured her that he was bound and could not harm her. After leaving him, the lawyer went to talk to her. He had come to inquire about the case because she was a lawyer and helped her husband with cases. He spoke to her with full respect and told her that this man had killed his wife, and if he were a lawyer like her, he would not defend him. At this, she hesitated and began to reconsider taking the case. After he left her room, she continued watching the little girl who had been following her, because her parents had locked the door from the outside and could not find a way to enter the residence. So they called her and asked her to reopen the door for them. After that, she went downstairs to check on the people who had gathered there, discussing the situation. Everyone began getting to know each other. All of them lived in the residence except for the 3 who worked there, but they were trapped inside because they couldn't find a way out, so they were asked to stay in an empty apartment. They agreed and convinced the others that there was no other solution. At that moment, they went to a neighbor they had known for a long time and asked him to give them many blankets to distribute to the people. He agreed in exchange for a military uniform shirt, because it had been his dream since childhood to become a military officer. Meanwhile, her husband went to their criminal neighbor and found that the girl who had testified against him had decided to change her statement after he convinced her and gave her a large sum of money. As a result, he had no evidence left and was forced to divorce. At that moment, the colonel contacted her and asked her to stop one of the traders on live stream, as he intended to tell people they had found an infected person inside and would close the door on him. Hyun quickly went to shut down the live stream and found only Baosh, still happy with what he had done online, living his whole life there. When they entered, they found his elderly parents, and there was no transformed person or anything else, he just wanted to do what he needed to do. They ended the live stream and rested at home. When they woke up the next morning, they were happy and energetic but were surprised to find that the residents outside had not opened the door for them because they feared someone inside might be infected with the same disease. They tried to wake them and asked them to open the door, but to no avail. Then she said to them, "Since you don't understand, let's be polite, I'll show you," and pulled out a gun to threaten them all. They quickly opened the door and went to take the food that had been sent to them by the forces, along with the special forces shirt they had requested from their neighbor, who had given it to them, and also the food. She went upstairs with the building's residents, and they ate there and laughed together. After that, they went to confront the trader across from them because they suspected he had distributed the drug in that building. But they were surprised to find no traces of him inside. They then spoke to the building manager for assistance, but she refused to cooperate, so they resolved to search for him themselves. They were startled to find blood stains on the doors and suspected that when people left the building, some had transformed. They went to buy food while searching and confirmed their suspicion. They found someone had turned into a zombie, and everyone leaving the building transformed and started biting others, spreading the infection. When they returned to the building and informed the residents that everyone outside had turned into zombies, no one believed them, especially the building manager, who suspected they were lying to gain the position. Angrily, they opened the door and said, "If any of you have the courage, go out and see for yourself." Naturally, no one dared to step outside and take the risk. At night, as usual, they gathered to think of a solution. Shortly after, the man who had killed his wife came and told them he had come to give a speech and propose an idea to get them out of the situation, and to confirm whether people had turned into zombies or not. He demanded $100 for this. Of course, the people agreed, tempted by greed. As he approached the truth, the girl decided to go down in the morning to protect them, taking the money from him. Hyun did not carry it and went with her only to protect her. Their trader, Allah, despite his fear of his imagination, was a YouTuber who filmed everything, so he decided to go out with them to record a video. Initially, they knocked on doors, even at neighbors' buildings, but the neighbors complained that they had returned to their normal state and tried to hide the truth from them. So they quickly left and went to the supermarket to get food, where they found a hidden girl and took her with them. Everyone began collecting food. However, the YouTuber found a bloodstain somewhere and decided to investigate. A girl had turned into a zombie and attacked him while he filmed. Andrew quickly entered and closed the door on them. Those who stayed behind did not know there was a zombie in that location until they saw the YouTuber's friends outside buying food. They quickly went to inspect the building to escape, but when they reached the door, the building manager had locked them out and allowed no one in. At that moment, the man who had killed his wife thought of a plan and used the voice of his transformed wife to deceive them, making them believe someone outside had turned. He left the phone and went upstairs, pretending he hadn't done anything. When they managed to open the door, they smashed his phone and confronted him inside for revenge. When he went out, they covered him in zombie blood to drink, which would transform him as well. When he saw the blood on his face, he screamed and collided with her for the first time in this situation, and she quickly took him into the house to threaten him. As she threatened him, the father, who worked where those drugs were sold, noticed the symptoms, so they restrained him to prevent harm. They asked him about the rest of the drugs, and during the conversation, they found their neighbor who had killed his wife waiting. He said, "I want you to reveal the location of those hidden pills that turn everyone into zombies." He continued to beat and provoke him to get the information until he transformed as well and started attacking, but at the last moment, he was restrained. Meanwhile, she went around the neighbors and learned that the lawyer had been contacted by someone from the garage, saying, "I want you to stop with me on the case." So their traitor, Al-Musti, went down to open the door. He was not afraid, perhaps because he had transformed and lied. When they opened the door, he entered at the last moment, and she closed it, realizing that Al-Musti had transformed and wanted to attack him too. In his anger, he thought he would start yelling at her because she had pushed him to the ground. When his wife came to check on him, he yelled at her for pressing again when he went down to open the door. After that, she went to the original source and realized that the man who had killed his wife was trying to search for the earrings to take them all. And that's why, when she went out, they tried to hit him, and in the commotion, they discovered that their traitor had turned into a zombie, while the lawyer filmed him and used the phone to show them the video he recorded to convince them to expel him. But Hyun tried to persuade them that he had been a normal human before being infected and that everyone was at risk, so they decided to vote. The votes were split, some called for his expulsion, while others insisted he be left alone. Indeed, Sweet seized the opportunity and convinced some of the neighbors, and although the traitor couldn't leave the house, he had to come out to vote in her favor. Thus, their traitor, Allah, remained with them on the phone, tied up. At that moment, the YouTuber realized his phone had fallen outside, so he went to those fools and paid them to return it. She went out with him, gathering the zombies who tried to bite her, while the fools ran inside without closing the door, letting many of the transformed follow them in. With her, they saw the traitor being attacked. This man was the brother of the resident writer, and by bad luck, he had visited her the day they took the phone, trying to trick her into lending money because she was a writer with some reputation. When she went out, she saw her brother scheming and didn't know how to act. Meanwhile, he entered the house and didn't find Sibon, realizing she was at their neighbors who had voted for her. He abandoned her because he discovered from the landlord that she had sold many of the drugs that turn people into zombies. Fearing he might have transformed and bitten her, he went to the neighbor and started knocking on the door, but they refused to open it. This increased her fear, so she tore open the door to check. Inside, she saw a terrifying scene, as if creatures were observing the house and furniture. She quickly took her out because none of them felt safe with the neighbor, and she explained that he was fine, acting that way because his father was a diplomat and not accustomed to their social class, which explained his odd personality. On the way back home, they were attacked by a zombie who had tried to convince the little girl to open the door. Seeing it, they panicked and were astonished at how it got inside. He told them the door at the bottom had been open. When they went down to check, they found it was indeed open, so they quickly closed it. When they went upstairs to check on the tied-up traitor, they found the writer showing compassion and loosening his bonds. As soon as his hands were free, he transformed and tried to bite her. They quickly tried to save her, but she got bitten. The colonel arrived, shot him with a gun, and killed him. Everyone was left in shock, but the colonel didn't arrest her. He explained that he had come to take the little girl to her family because the transformed couldn't control themselves, and giving them the child might return them to normal. Sibon agreed to this. Hyun realized the YouTuber had left the phone door open, so he went up, took the phone, and smashed it because his negligence had endangered all of them. Then he went with the colonel to the building's residents, who were angry and wanted the traitor removed. The colonel explained that the confined people were not just in this building but across the country because the situation was under martial law, and it was better to adapt and be patient until the problem was resolved. He told them the truth, explaining that his visit wasn't just for the little girl but for Sibon because her blood contained an antibody to the virus that could be used to make a cure. Sibon understood everything and confronted him about his plan, and he praised her. At that moment, a zombie attacked her. He killed it quickly. She tried to fend it off but was struck with a sedated spear and lost consciousness. She was then kidnapped in a car, while Yoon followed. Before they left the building, he jumped, disrupted her, and threatened her with his weapon. She tried to seize the gun, which surprised him because of how quickly she disarmed him and asked how she did it. Then he asked for forgiveness and left his assistant to give her another blood dose. At that moment, people told him he was exploiting her. He replied that he hadn't revealed the truth to the public yet, and her blood contained an antivirus substance that could either kill or protect many people. Hyun was convinced by his explanation, and they decided to cooperate. Meanwhile, the writer found her brother speaking to her from the garage, reassuring her that despite being bitten, he hadn't turned into a zombie. She felt relieved and decided to go down to see it for herself, though worried. She told him to open the door, otherwise, no one in the building would find a safe place. They found a cloth with bloodstains, suspecting he had hidden it inside. They searched but found no evidence. She then prepared a hidden spot in an empty apartment for him while monitoring him outside. They found him, and he explained he had opened his brother's door and entered the apartment to check, confirming he hadn't transformed. They believed him and covered him. After confirming he was still human, their traitor went to the building owner and explained that they had hidden a zombie inside. Shocked by the news, she felt relieved that neither she nor Seobon were pregnant and told them this endangered their lives, shouting at them. At this point, their traitor, Allah, began crying and said, "Just tie me up." They did so, tying him. He was certain he would turn into a zombie because he had taken the zombie-inducing drug placed in water bottles for everyone. When Hyun observed him, he drank normally, and Allah drank too, choking with fear. Hyun reassured him that he wouldn't transform and that they had foiled his plan, explaining that the drug they found had been put in food and drink, not the one that turns people into zombies. Initially, Yoon had been searching for that drug, so he took the bottle from his brother and replaced it with another medicine. They finally felt at ease until they found Hyun's friend threatened at gunpoint after convincing the building manager that Seobon had very little time before turning into a zombie and that Hyun was protecting her because he loved her. And that's why he stood against them. He was scared for himself and wanted to return to his wife alive. Everyone was shocked, but he began to obey, and they entered their house. When they started searching, they found nothing. After that, they were expelled outside, and the situation remained unchanged. Hyun, however, understood his position. The important thing was that everyone had become afraid of Seobon, realizing he might turn into a zombie. At that moment, she came out holding a knife and told them she would cut her head to see who would crave the blood and turn into a zombie. She began to cut her head quickly, then put her hands in and started touching everyone. No one reacted except for this girl. She smelled the blood, transformed, and tried to attack him. Quickly, they managed to control her and locked her in the living room. When she awoke, she immediately returned to her normal self, so they took her to the roof for safety, then went downstairs to continue their test and see if there were any zombies, but they discovered everything was normal. When they returned home, they remembered that the movements of the building owner had been strange, and he hadn't drunk water in front of him. The zombies had never attacked him, so they suspected he might be transformed. They immediately went to his house and confirmed their suspicion. His wife discovered it and ran quickly to cover her head and hide. When they knocked on the door, she tried to trick them and didn't tell the truth. Hyun then entered the house quickly to search for her, while Seobon suspected he had left the house. She went out quickly and found that she had indeed entered the doctor's room. When they saw her, they followed until she tried to bite. At the same time, the doctor quickly entered the bedroom and closed the door. In the living room, the lawyer was with the girl, and they discovered that he had been cheating on his wife. Here, the zombie tried to attack them, but he intervened at the last moment. Hyun then entered to stop them. Afterwards, they went outside to explain to the residents what had happened in that room. The doctor left the bedroom where he had been hiding and approached the zombie to draw its attention away from the surgeon. The zombie followed him and ran off, then he returned to the house and hid as if nothing had happened. When they entered the house, they found a man fallen near the surgeon and accused him of killing him, especially the wife, who was not pregnant, both her and Siban. When they returned home, Hyun rushed to the bathroom, where he was shocked to discover that a zombie had ruined something, meaning it would also turn into a zombie. He quickly intervened with the colonel and told him to take Siban with him. From his words, Hyun realized he had also transformed, and he promised he would come back to protect her. Hyun tried not to show anything to Siban and indeed paid her no attention, especially when she went upstairs to the young man who had been fine but was not in the house. They found a note saying he was very sorry and had made a huge mistake, leading them to think he had transformed and killed someone. But who was this killer? And where was he now? The next morning, they found the body of Malat Almenaj lying there with bite marks, her blood completely drained. Shortly after, the doctor arrived. When he saw her body, he panicked and ran outside to confirm to them that a zombie had bitten her. Everyone began guessing who the perpetrator was. Meanwhile, the lawyer's wife could only think about what her husband had been doing with the girl in the abandoned house. She realized he had been cheating. The lawyer tried to lie and cover it up, saying he was asking about a case, but naturally, she ignored it and forgave him. Siban noticed the doctor's strange behavior. He no longer drank water in front of him. Typically, those infected with this disease don't drink much water because they crave blood and become transformed. She grew suspicious and entered a room alone to check the wound on his hand, since those infected usually close their wounds quickly. But she lost reassurance when she found his wounds still open. She told him she was his friend and that he was infected but hadn't told her. He admitted he had been infected but didn't want to tell her. He lied to her, saying, "I was infected, and I'll tell you what we agreed on." She trusted him, unaware he was lying, and in the morning, he opened the wound with his hands to show her he hadn't been infected. What mattered now wasn't his infection, but that they had discovered the man who seemed normal had actually died the same way as they found Malat Almenaj. They realized the same killer had killed both, and he was an ordinary person, not infected, but wanted to make them believe the killer was a zombie. Meanwhile, the colonel's assistant arrived and told them that one resident in the mobile building was denying his identity, pretending to be someone else, and carrying a national ID. This person was Andrew. They now understood the reason for the entire plot and why his face hadn't been shown. Suddenly, they discovered he was the killer. She went to search for him and found him in her house, and the lawyer had helped him enter the house by convincing the little girl to open the door. Immediately, Andrew entered, struck the officer with a gun, grabbed the girl, and began threatening them with her. Then he left to try to rescue the officer. They tried to calm him and assured him he would survive and return to his wife. When he went down, he threatened them and said he would leave the girl alive, but only if they turned on the generators and water, knowing that the sound of the generators would wake the zombies to attack them. He didn't care, and now they understood he wanted to kill them. Indeed, he turned on the generators, and all the zombies awoke and began pursuing them. But they struck quickly, entered the mobile building, and closed the door behind them. They didn't leave through the same elevator Andrew was waiting at, because they knew if he found them alive inside, he would kill them. This was part of covering his crimes. So they planned and took a different elevator. If he admitted he was infected, the door would open and the zombies would attack. They entered quickly, closed the door, and found he didn't attack them, but he felt ashamed for being infected and not telling anyone the truth. But she didn't care about these words and was very sad because she was about to lose him. In her desperation, she went to him and told him she would stay with him, but he pushed her away and told her that this was the safe distance they needed to maintain so he wouldn't transform and hurt her. She replied, "It's okay, even if you bite me," and confessed to him that she loved him. He was overjoyed at last because she had admitted her love. After that, she went to the little girl who had been with her all this time in the lawyer's room, and they discovered that his wife had kicked her out. Only then did she see that he wanted to enter his house with a sword. She tried to stop him, hit him, and took Sol with her, along with his wife. He had thought she wouldn't distance herself this time, but she surprised him with the ashes of the wedding ring. While moving around, they saw the girl he knew coming toward them. She said, "Come and see," and guided him to the doctor's room, He fell to the ground, and he began to suspect that she was the one who had killed him. She kept lying to him, so he told her he had fallen by himself and mentioned that the tattoo on his back was the password to his bank account. As he moved, he noticed blood on the golf club and realized she was the one who had killed him. Fearful of her, he began obeying her and tried to write the code on his back so the money could be stolen from him. At that moment, the doctor quickly woke him and hit him on the back of the head. Before losing consciousness, he took the zombie-inducing drug so he could turn into a zombie and remain alive before dying. Meanwhile, the others tried to control the situation to escape the entire building, but Andrew followed them to the roof and kept shooting at them. One of the bullets hit Hyun's hand. Hyun, fighting, managed to escape from the colonel and closed the door behind them. Then he went to Andrew. She was worried about him but had to bring all these people to the colonel to save them, then returned to him. She managed to get into a car in the garage, which was full of zombies, and escaped from them all straight to the colonel. After that, she gave these people to be rescued, though she found herself sedated from behind. She felt shocked because she realized she would lose this way, but he didn't care and sedated her, taking her with him. On the way to the center, she saw that people outside were living their lives normally. When she regained consciousness, she realized the whole country had returned to normal except for them, which made her resent the officer. Then she was given Hyle's phone, which had been with the officer's friend. It contained a video in which he expressed his love for her. She kept replaying the video, poor girl, and cried just for him. Then the colonel struck her and told her they had taken her blood and made 2 doses from it. These doses could be used on the infected to make them well, but unfortunately, they could not use her blood again. For this reason, everyone wanted these 2 doses. He would take 1 dose for his pregnant wife to become well, and the second dose would be given to her to give to Hyun, allowing her to escape from the center with his help. She took the second dose and remained on the run. On the way, she saw Miss Sim trapped in a house and realized her husband had died, leaving the little girl to live as an orphan. That's why she went to her mother to give her the dose for Hyun, accompanied by Hyle. Despite everything that happened, she stayed by his side. The little girl could not live without her parents. Then she returned to the building, where she found the writer's brother in front of her and discovered that, up until that point, her brother had not transformed. They reassured each other about Hyle. She discovered that after they had left him to turn into a zombie, Andrew had caused it. Then they returned home, and the writer saw her brother in a certain state and began taking care of him because he had returned to his normal self. When she woke up, she went to the roof to look, then quickly returned downstairs to search. At that moment, the doctor had awakened from his coma and found that the lawyer and the girl who had stolen his money were missing. When he searched for them, he found the 2, realizing that Andrew had attacked them. At that point, they gave the zombie-inducing drug to the man so he wouldn't die and would remain alive. They also noticed that the doctor's house was full of his wife's jewelry, which they tried to steal. When he saw them, he tried to kill them but escaped at the last moment. When he left, he saw the girl who had stolen the computer and took it to prevent the money from being closed, helping them and stopping them from turning into zombies. Then they spent some time with him. She went to his house to steal the computer, but he didn't see her. He grabbed her to prepare it for her, even though he hadn't turned into a zombie yet, and gave it back to her. Suddenly, the building manager confronted him, saying she couldn't handle Hyle, and they agreed on a plan. He went toward them, injuring the girl nearby. Immediately, he smelled blood, transformed, but didn't want to harm her, and they quickly pushed him back. He returned to his room and hid. Meanwhile, she finally arrived at the house and entered to threaten him. As soon as she began speaking, he returned to his human state. Finally, the army entered the entire building and captured all the infected. The first person they captured was the writer's brother because they discovered his blood contained antibiotics against the disease, just like Sibon. They decided to take the treatment from his blood. The doctor and the manager decided to put him on trial for all the misdeeds he had committed. Andrew attacked Sibon, but he was killed at the last moment. A year passed after these events. Life in Korea returned to normal. They married properly this time and lived their lives. And so, the story ends here. Subscribe for more.